Gardening in August is a humbling experience and often bittersweet. Extreme heat and drought conditions make vegetable production a challenge. Before each growing season, I like to spend time planning and visualizing. This garden tour illustrates the transitional phase of that process. Many crops are still growing and producing, while others are ready to be composted. There are many newly planted crops such as corn and long beans, as well as some perennial vegetables such as artichokes and asparagus, along with many herbs. Follow along as I explore what growing your own food is like here in Central Texas, Zone 8B, during the hottest and driest time of year. What's up, everybody? This is Scott from New Garden Road, and I'm here to inform, inspire, and elevate you. If you like this video, give it a big thumbs up and spread the word for me. While you're at it, subscribe and get notified for more gardening action. Encouraging biodiversity and restoring habitat is my mission. One garden at a time. Alright, I want to talk about a few of the August garden champions. It's time to make a transition in the garden. There's some things that are done producing. Not these okra though. These okra plants are fired up and ready to roll. I'm gonna keep going. Clearly I should have got out here yesterday and harvested. I've been harvesting every day, but I skipped a day. You can see there's a couple that are possibly overgrown. Nonetheless, that's a productive summer vegetable right there. I have grown more southern peas than ever this year. They really attract a wide array of insects, and I really appreciate that presence in my garden. These peas really just draw in the biodiversity in the garden. They produce me some food. They're a great cover crop. I've been probably getting about 1 gallon to 2 gallons of peas per week. I've got the Calico Crowder. That one has been super delicious, really unique, along with the Big Red Ripper. Just picked a bunch of fresh peas too. These will need to be shelled and cooked. You want to do that as soon as possible. You can see how productive they are. This is a great food to grow in the summer. Really continues to produce. Now these are both heirloom varieties. I plant 1 seed per square foot and they absolutely take over the bed. Regardless of whether or not you harvest the peas for food, you're adding nutrients to the soil, you're protecting soil life with all that foliage that's growing there, and you're encouraging biodiversity by creating habitat for numerous insects, pollinators, and predatory insects. There's some mud daubers, several species of paper wasp, and I see a couple of small butterflies. There's also a really large, mostly black carpenter bee. They are difficult to capture. They're so fast, but they've got like this iridescent blue indigo wings. There's a couple of them out here today. They love the flowers on these peas. Isn't that cool? Such a beautiful insect. I planted some lima beans, some pole limas, for the first time this spring. These lima beans have been a champion in my garden. This is the Violet's multicolored lima bean. Got them from Southern Exposure Seed Exchange. They have been so dark green the whole time. Haven't skipped a beat. They've produced several rounds of beans, and I love them. I don't think it gets tougher than this. With this heat and this drought-like conditions that they've been enduring, they look fantastic. This is part experiment and mostly neglect. This is one of those lima beans, and it does not get irrigated over here. It's still dark green. It's been flowering. It's set some pods. Really impressed with that. I mean, no irrigation. That's the type of thing you want to grow in a hot, dry climate. Last winter, I had a fantastic crop of kale. We were eating off of it practically every single day. When it was time to pull those crops, it was really daunting to me. Where was I going to get my greens, my leafy greens, all that nutrition, those vitamins and minerals? I was more determined than ever to establish some warm season greens and really learn how to integrate those into my diet. This is a variety of amaranth called Elephant Head. You can eat the foliage, the tender foliage. This is another variety of amaranth. This is called an edible leaf amaranth. Really distinctive coloration. I grew this several years ago and let it go to seed, and a few plants will pop up every year. Really, really nutritious, easy to grow in hot weather. One of the other warm season greens I want to show you is this perpetual spinach. It's actually in the chard family, but it's got a really nice flavor, almost kind of citrusy, really crispy, bright flavor, great texture. I'll add that in and mix it up with some of the other warm season greens along with some herbs. Some of my favorite herbs to mix in with these warm season greens, really brighten up the flavor, is this basil. I'll put 4 or 5 leaves on my sandwich along with some of these warm season greens, and it's just delicious. Moringa is One of the other greens that I like to add to my warm season greens mix. So nutritious, really easy to grow. I'll just take like a whole leaf like this and pull off the leaves. Just kind of rake them off with my finger. Put those on my sandwich, in my tacos, on your salad, whatever you like to make. This is a French sorrel. This has a citrusy flavor. It really likes cooler temperatures best, but I've got it here in morning sun, afternoon shade. And this is another leafy green that I like in the warm season, called a longevity spinach, Guinura. It's really delicious. So I will say it may take some adjustment in your mindset, in your palate. They're not gonna be like your cool season greens, such as spinach, lettuce, kale, and collards. These warm season greens are a little bit more grassy in their flavor, but what I found is that you get a really nice texture and flavor profile if you combine many of them together and add some fresh herbs. Basil has been #1 in this mix, and it has really balanced out those flavors. I do grow quite a few herbs. This is a variety of culinary sage, and then behind it I've got some Sicilian oregano. Excellent flavor. We've got some French thyme and some rosemary. This is garlic chives, one of the toughest herbs that you can grow, and it's putting on quite a show right now, flowering, attracting lots of bees, pollinators, just beautiful. Lots of herbs growing here. There's about 13 varieties of mint. I just love that. Come and crush some, put some into my water, make teas. I've got a few different things growing here, some ornamentals as well. This is a curry tree. Got some nice berries for the first time this year. This is a great flavoring. You can use it like bay leaf. This is culantro. It has a cilantro-like flavor, but it's called culantro. It reseeds pretty profusely. That's what all these sprouts are. I took the seed head and I just laid it down in there. I really like to grow a lot of flowers in the garden, no matter what season it is. This adds some beauty and some contrast. I really enjoy the space that I create. Throughout the summer, I've had a great show of these giant zinnias. The zinnias really are still putting on quite a show. I did a lot of deadheading yesterday morning, and they've got a lot of blooms coming in, but they really will put on a long display of color in your garden. I also grew a really fantastic variety of sunflower called Sunset. There's some gold, brown, and burgundy tones in these flowers, and they have been absolutely exquisite. This sunflower has been quite a show. I think it peaked this week at about 12 blooms. They're starting to fade a little bit. The petals are dropping off, and then the seeds are beginning to mature. The Mexican sunflowers have always been a great favorite of mine. Their color is just astounding, and they really attract butterflies and hummingbirds. I have a table set up adjacent to where one of these Mexican sunflowers has volunteered, and it's about 5 feet away. The other morning I was out here eating my breakfast, and I had a visit from a beautiful hummingbird. That's what I'm talking about when I say my garden nourishes me, because I have these little moments, these experiences, and if I can start off my day like that, it makes all the difference. I love these Scarlet O'Hara morning glories. They've really put on a good show. They're continuing to flower, starting to produce some seed heads. I always overwinter some tropical hibiscus in my greenhouse, and several of these plants I've had for many years. They really get going in the hot weather. I need to water them every day. I'll give them a little fish emulsion, but they make such beautiful flowers. And if you cut these early in the morning, someone you might know could wear them in their hair, or they can be placed in a small vase, and they can really make an impact. Tropical hibiscus are one of my favorite flowers to grow. This one is more orange. I've got about 5 varieties, and I overwinter them in my greenhouse. They always come back. So at some point in the season, inevitably you're gonna ask yourself, when is it time to pull some plants? I still have a couple varieties of cucumbers growing. This is the Arkansas Little Leaf. They were great little cucumbers. I did lots of pickling, and they're still producing here and there, but I will tell you, they are bitter as they can be, so I've stopped harvesting them. Not all of these Suyo Long are pulling through at this point. I don't really expect them to, but there are a couple of vines that still look good. I think I'm gonna take out these brown ones. They don't look like they are real happy. Green beans are another crop that I've had continue to grow in the garden. They've really struggled to produce mature beans. Nonetheless, I've let them stick around. But really, this is the type of thing, if you need the gardening space to grow something else, or they're causing issues or problems, or if they're really suffering or stressed out, then you just have to make the call to pull these plants. You have to develop an intuition around it. These are some green beans that I planted in the spring, and I think they've just had a really nice location to grow with some shade from the harshest sun. They've been firing up here recently. They do struggle to produce mature beans in this heat, but I'm gonna give them a chance. A lot of people really associate tomatoes with warm weather, hot weather, summer gardening, but the fact of the matter is that they really suffer in hot conditions. I like to grow cherry tomatoes because they tend to have a longer production window, but nonetheless, about the end of July, I have to make a decision. Have they done well enough that they could be cut back and flush out for a fall production, or do I simply need to remove them and consider planting new plants? This is my yellow pear tomato that I planted, I believe in April, and it has produced really well for me. I did cut it back really hard a couple of weeks ago. It's flushed out with some beautiful new growth. I grew a few varieties of squash this spring, and most of them have already died off. So sometimes things are really mysterious in the garden. This is the Seminole pumpkin that I seeded in March. This has been one of my favorite varieties. It's proven to be resistant to the squash vine borer, even though it hasn't done a lot of flowering and it hasn't fruited for me this whole time. Unsolved garden mysteries. The shishito peppers kind of calmed down. They were really productive. Still got some on here, and it's starting to set flowers. I think it's going to have a great resurgence in the fall when the weather breaks, or when the heat breaks rather. I love this pepper for snacking, and it's been really abundant. I do have some new crops growing. My spring planting of corn was not very productive, but I tried it again, and I planted in the middle of July. Got several varieties growing. This one is a Cherokee long-eared popcorn, and here I have some Country Gentleman on the right. That's a white sweet corn, and Ashworth is the variety on the left. I'm ready to thin it out and dirt it up a little bit. I planted them in trenches so that I could do that. I planted some sweet potatoes in late May, and I want to give them about 90 days. So I'm waiting till the end of this month before I will do a test dig and see how things have developed. At that point, if I want to leave them in the ground and let them size up further, I can do that. The tops don't die back like Irish potatoes, so you just really have to open up the soil and see what you got at some point. I sprouted these from store-bought organic sweet potatoes that were grown at a local farm, and I planted 25 of those. Look how they've really taken over this raised bed. You can harvest some of the foliage. The young tender foliage can be eaten raw or sauteed. This is a great plant to grow in a hot, dry climate, and it's one of my favorite foods. Asparagus and artichokes are perennial vegetables. They are really long-lived, they survive the winter, and both of these plantings I've had for several years. They're not going to produce again until early next year, but nonetheless, here's an idea of what those crops will look like in your garden in the middle of summer. This is what asparagus looks like in the middle of summer. It's a big floppy mess of foliage. That's just what it does. I have some artichoke growing too, laying low, and it's getting some shade from these other plants, so it's looking pretty good. But that's a nice long-lived perennial vegetable that you can grow. This is ginger. I have it growing in containers. I have 4 containers. So I just took some store-bought organic ginger and planted it early spring, and in another month or so I should be able to harvest a little bit. I'm really trying to build up my stock so that year over year I can produce more, and I think that I'm going to construct a raised bed and start some there, get it established. And this is turmeric. That's another rhizome. You can use that as flavoring. It's very similar to ginger. Beautiful plant. Really tropical looking, growing it in containers. The garden is a constant work of progress, and I want to highlight a couple of things that I've really been into this season. Number one is successive plantings. That means you plant some crops, about 2 weeks later you plant some more. The idea is that you are hedging your bets if something happens, if weather conditions aren't right, or if you have an insect or disease problem, you've got a second sowing that will hopefully come through. Otherwise, if everything is successful, you can level load your harvest so that you'll have a continued and sustained supply of fresh food. I did a second planting of cantaloupe this year, and those have been starting to mature. I've harvested several in the last week. Got a couple more out here. That's been really Really nice to have some fresh melon in the heat of summer. I just thought to check. I was wondering if there were some more hiding under here. There's a pear. Isn't that cute? I've also planted another round of long beans here. You do successive plantings and you'll get more sustained food production. I'm still getting the hang of that, but I got these going about 3 weeks ago, the same time as my corn. The second thing that I've really been enjoying is seed saving. I have been saving seeds from lima beans, southern peas, sunflowers, cosmos, delphiniums, larkspur. I even saved some seeds from artichokes this year. I've really been into it. I started to develop a process around it, and what I'm doing is I'm gonna save a few, but I'm also gonna give away as many seeds as possible. I'm donating those to a local organization that helps disperse seeds to people who don't have great access to them. This is such a wonderful thing to do, and it feels so good to be able to take things from my garden and share them with others. Things are a little bit different out here in the summer garden. You need to watch your step. You've got a few things to look out for. Number one, when we have heavy rains, that's going to push up some fire ant mounds. The last time this happened, we got several throughout the garden, but I want to let you know that I didn't do anything about it. You don't have to do anything about it, but what you do have to do is balance your risk. It could be bad enough that you do need to take direct action. My philosophy around pest control is to enact the lowest level form of control that is needed, and then I'll work my way up if needed. So with these fire ants, I'm mindful, I watch my step, and I haven't had any issues. I mean, this is the tip of the iceberg. There are hundreds of thousands of fire ants in a network underneath this soil. I'll just let them run their course, and they'll migrate, so they won't be here forever. But you gotta watch your step. I love attracting life to the garden, and like I was talking about the southern peas, they have been full of insect life. Beneficial insects, wasps, pollinators, butterflies. You need to take into consideration you're gonna see some bees, some wasps, some insects that could possibly sting or bite you in the garden. Particularly in the summertime, this is a much higher risk, so you want to keep your eyes peeled, watch your step, and look out for these guys. I know a lot of people are really worried about getting stung by bees and wasps and hornets and all that type of thing, and that's for good reason. There can be, you know, an anaphylactic reaction, plus they just are painful. But you know, wasps serve a purpose in the garden, and they're predatory. I really think that's an important thing to acknowledge in an organic garden, because you can't exclude the bugs or the insects that you don't like or you're afraid of. I have walked through these vines mindfully, doing my business, and I have not been bothered by a single wasp. They're part of the balance. The balance is integral to the organic garden. Things are going to stay in check. They're going to be healthier. You want that biodiversity. You also want to have that habitat where you have insects and animals flourishing in and around your garden. Just realize that this is part of gardening. Growing your own food and observing nature is full of rewards. It's not all about winning or losing. This garden nourishes my mind, body, and soul. Now check out some of these other awesome gardening videos on my channel. You can grow your own food. Keep it organic.